Hello, and welcome to the second episode in IOTA's Future Proof webinar series. At the IOTA Foundation, we are specialists when it comes to using new technologies to transform industries today. Through Future Proof, we want to share this knowledge with you. We're hoping that this will inspire new ideas and help you to understand how the Internet of Things and distributed ledger technologies can enable new business. We start each webinar with a presentation from one of our experts. And at the end of each webinar, there'll be a short section where our host will answer your questions from the chat here on YouTube. I'm your host, Daniel Thompson-Ivoto from the engineering department at IOTA, and I'm really happy to introduce you to our Director of Partnerships, Holger Köther. Holger comes from a tech background with a long history of corporate experience and department management. He helps onboard new partners and supports existing corporate partners, especially in the challenges of integration. Today, he'll be talking about collaboratively creating enterprise-ready marketplace platforms and introducing the Tangle EE. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic and the cam and the screen over to Holger.
Hello, my name is Holger Köther, and welcome to the Future Proof webinar series from the IOTA Foundation. Today, we are going to talk about next generation platform models, decentralized marketplaces, which is quite a fascinating topic. So I am happy that you're all here, that you tuned in, and that you're attending this webinar. So decentralized marketplaces, why do we actually need them? Decentralized marketplaces are important because at the moment we are quite in a fascinating time where the digital realm and the physical realm, they are merging a lot more together. So you can see this with your wearables, you can see this with the self-driving cars which are being developed, with the drone technology which is progressing. And all of these technologies, they are going to get automated a lot more due to deep learning and artificial intelligence. And at one point, they are in a state that they can actually participate in the daily economic life by themselves. So a good example is what different OEMs have been announcing, for example, that you cannot buy a car anymore, but as part of a mobility as a service concept, you can just call the car through an app when you need it. So you can see that this world is getting a lot more automated over the next couple of years. And decentralized marketplaces are especially relevant because they can help to create the ecosystem where all of these participants can directly interact with each other. So you can see it on the slide, which I'm currently sharing, that decentralized marketplace is essentially the foundation for distributed systems of autonomous economic agents. So economic agent means take the self-driving car, and the self-driving car now is just driving around. It's listening to requests to transport people or goods from A to B. And the car, of course, is working based on optimized algorithms. So it wants to have like the maximum revenue due to the market economic principles. So you have a certain goal-oriented behavior between these components, and this overall requires then a new form of collaboration, how in an open ecosystem these machines, but also the humans work together as part of this automated construct. So distributed ledger is a very good way to actually achieve this because distributed ledger technology creates a layer of trust, which can be utilized by all of these participants. And now, when we think about marketplaces, so why are decentralized marketplaces relevant? They're relevant, you can see it here, because the platform of today, they're risky, insecure, and expensive. And I will come to that in a second, what that means. So insecure and risky, essentially because you have like a single operator at the moment of marketplaces. So we have a lot of centralized marketplaces at the moment, but these are also providing like or are working in a very siloed approach. So you have individual companies or corporates or actors like starting marketplaces. Let's take like eBay, for example. And because the marketplace owner, he wants to have a certain revenue, it's expensive, it doesn't scale. But so if you think of the benefits of decentralized marketplaces, there's a way that we can utilize them just to cut out the middleman. We can reduce risks at the same time because we don't need somebody for a trust service or for an escrow service, for example, anymore. And it can be applied to like a variety of different scenarios. So across industries or also across different vendors. This is why an open ecosystem for these marketplaces is so important. And with IOTA, we are working on the underlying technology to make this happen. So let's talk about marketplaces. What do we currently have? So you can see it here on the picture. What we have very often is that we have centralized marketplaces. So in a centralized marketplace, like any issue of trust is resolved by relying on a trusted third party. So the whole responsibility of the operation, policing the platform, removing misbehaving actors, keep it secure by always updating to the latest technology, mediate disputes, and so on. This is all done by the marketplace responsible person or by the marketplace owner. You could add a component where you can say, okay, the settlement layers or the payments, they can be managed by a trusted intermediary, but typically they are then also asking for, or it creates certain costs. The big downside is that all of these buyers and sellers, they are completely relying on this third party. So and this can make the whole marketplace a bit like opaque because there's very little transparency about what is happening inside the marketplace. Only the operator or the organizations which are running the marketplace know exactly about it. So the problem or the problems in summary with the centralized marketplace is that the mechanism itself is not transparent. It cannot be excluded that the platform provider may abuse the control over the marketplace and manipulate the market for their own benefit. The platform operator may sanction or discriminate individual participants for whatever reason, we don't know. So a good example for this is PayPal. PayPal is like a payment platform which can just decide to close accounts. You've probably read about that in the media without giving any reason. And many businesses have been like affected in this way or even be ruined. Then a third party can attack and abuse the platform, can manipulate the market for their own benefit if there's an exploit. The platform provider itself can set certain conditions for the operation of the platform. And then, of course, the participation fees. And when you have like a critical mass or a relevance for this market provider, let's take Uber for an example, where Uber just says, right, we are matching the driver and the customer. But for this, we are charging 30% to 42 or maybe even more percent of the fees. And that's just the way it works. And either you work with us or you don't work with us. So there's no like market economic principle because Uber has like a critical weight as part of this marketplace because they're the operator. It also means that the different companies, they must align the business models with the business model of this large platform. So they are forced into this. And for small and medium enterprises, this is very often associated with an unacceptable amount of effort because they have to adopt to all of these regulations. And once they have done it, typically you have a certain lock-in effect. So switching to an alternate provider is often very difficult or maybe even impossible due to the costs of the switch. So the biggest problem, what we have with the centralized marketplaces is essentially like a lack of trust. And the result of this is that currently what you see that in many B2B scenarios, so business to business scenarios, the majority of companies, they are just setting up their own platforms because they want to be in control of all of these conditions. Yeah, This then has the effect that that it's very hard to actually get a critical mass, because again, you have a lot of dedicated platforms, and because you have a lot of dedicated platforms, your customer base is then also split, and you cannot really aggregate like a critical mass of users. So you don't have like any positive network effects of the whole scenario. Then we have the second scenario where we have no marketplace. So in this scenario, essentially the seller and the buyer, they are interacting directly with each other. The seller and the buyer, they have both the full responsibility and also the full burden. So they need to build know-how in all of these disciplines, like how to access resources, know-how, how to do negotiations, negotiate all of these agreements individually. So if you think how this would scale, it's really hard because you cannot really automate this process, and it's very costly in terms of time and resources. So this leads to the effect that the businesses, they only work with well-known partners. And when you work with these partners, you typically also have then high acquisition and matching costs, like for anybody new coming into the system. And this then again limits you, because essentially um, you're contracting only with a very limited number of potential partners, just because the onboarding process is very extensive. And then we have decentralized marketplaces. And decentralized marketplaces, they are like in the, I would say like sweet spot here, because in decentralized marketplaces, you have a number of advantages, which are essentially canceling out the disadvantages of the other two scenarios due to the use of technology. And distributed ledger technology has the big advantage that it can act, as I said before, as this layer of trust. And that because you have suddenly technology which is covering these disadvantages, technology is scalable and it can be automated. So essentially, before, where you had a lot of like manual effort, or where you had a lot of costs or risk as part of the marketplace model, this can be covered by the technology itself. So what happens in a decentralized marketplace? In a decentralized marketplace, the different members, they agree on a certain set of rules. And these rules, they are then governing the transactions. The rules and the infrastructure of the marketplace, they provide a framework in which you can set up like automated agreements. So you have decentralization of these different participants, which avoids then a centralization of power in the hands of one single actor, or in one consortium with very few players. But it's also very transparent, because you know as part of the marketplace which rules are actually applying. So what is happening here is then that we have technology replacing these previously agreements, or this previously like how to say that essentially you have to trust a single party, but the security relies on technology itself. So all the guarantees, they're coming from the technical platform itself. This also means that you need to have a proper design and of course a proper implementation, because if your base technology is flawed, yeah, then this opens up a new set of attack vectors. But the big benefit is that essentially you have a direct connection between all of these market participants. Everybody can join directly this marketplace. You have very little, let's say, like matching costs, and at the same time, it's possible to link like an unprecedented amount of players into this marketplace, especially those sellers and buyers which previously just had no market access because it was too extensive to enter these different additional markets. You have a lot of positive network effects resulting out of this. So simply because this effect occurs when you have the benefit of a product or of a service which is being sold increases with the numbers of users. And I will come to a couple of examples in a few minutes. So yeah, it's possible to then, if you're a participant of this marketplace, to not rely really on one vendor, let's say like, or one buyer or one seller as part of a multi-sourcing strategy, for example, versus having like a single provider. And it's like also easy to change this provider. You have the possibility then to also, because of the automation, to standardize the descriptions and of the products or of the data. So you can also start selling data, for example, of what is offered. So this is coming back to what I said initially, that you have these defined business rules, which are the backbone of this marketplace. And one of these business rules could say, if you're offering, let's say, industry-grade silicon, then this industry-grade silicon is specified by a number of criteria, for example, the purity or the color of silicon. And this can be standardized and described in a standardized way. So you could also scan through all of these proposals, let's say from a potential seller, completely automatically. So what you have self-determined, you have independent decisions based on this. You have a very high flexibility in this scenario. And the infrastructure of a decentralized marketplace is just open to all participants and available without any restrictions. And any restrictions, this even counts, for example, towards cross-border negotiations. So you can see there are like a lot of benefits. And now the question is, what does a decentralized marketplace, or like a marketplace in general, then actually do? So first, we talked about this. You need to match the buyer and the seller. This is like, of course, the most important criterion. You need to allow a set of negotiations for a contract with defined the terms and conditions for products or for services. And then the marketplace essentially provides the whole framework to enforce all of these terms. So the marketplace provides accountability. And when you think of accountability, there are a couple of topics. So all of the users, they must be held accountable for their actions, because the marketplace is not really worth it if somebody could just slip out of previous accounted conditions. And the marketplace itself, as a framework, it must be able to account to these users' actions. So what, when, by whom. If you negotiate a contract, it's important what is actually being negotiated, when has it been negotiated, by whom has it been negotiated, and ideally the by whom is supported by additional underlying systems like an identity system, where an identity cannot be faked. So, for example, like a decentralized identity or a unified identity. Then the content of the data is important. So what is actually the content of the contract or the exchange data? If you're in a marketplace which is selling data by itself, the data records are important. So you need to have like a single point of truth in the system. It needs to be tamper-proof. This is then also where distributed ledger technology is coming in. You need to keep the data only as long as it's really needed. It shouldn't be available much longer, but it needs to be audible by third parties. And if you think of the privacy aspect, so there's like a mixed mode, because of course you would need to have like public offers and public offers for the buyers to also understand what is actually being sold. But then you want to keep the rest of the negotiations private, because if you're a company and you're buying data, services, or goods on this marketplace, of course, competitors should not see the how much you actually paid for this and then draw a conclusion how your business actually looks like, or how much revenue you're doing, or how many parts of one type you're actually buying. Yeah, and then the marketplace should provide a bit of flexibility, so certain flexible boundaries to terminate early or renegotiate the terms, for example. So I've listed this here, and like from what I think is the most important is really the issue of trust and accountability when you draw a conclusion across these different models. And you can see it on the right-hand side that essentially technology is replacing certain criteria which we had in the centralized marketplace or in the no marketplace scenario. And if you think of accountability and trust, combined with automation, these are the two biggest benefits, because essentially it enables you to have a very trustless model that you don't need to trust a centralized party. And at the same way, you can just scale up this whole marketplace / negotiation scenario, because you can automate it and you can automate the underlying technology. So this is the main reason why a lot of companies are looking now into decentralized marketplaces, simply because it can provide these two benefits, which together have a huge leverage on the way how you actually do business and can interact with your surrounding ecosystem and business partners, and maybe even have new business models which haven't been discovered yet. So let's look at a couple of examples. We have at IOTA, we have created several, I would say like blueprints and open source the technology blueprints, how this could work. So one of them is a peer-to-peer trading marketplace where you have like energy producers and energy consumers, and in the middle you have a grid logic. So that you can apply this, for example, to an island or to a dedicated neighborhood, which would be self-sustainable and which would be energy positive. So like an energy positive district, where the producers have solar panels on top of there, or like personal wind turbines on the top of their roofs, and at the same time you have consumers which are consuming energy. So you have the possibility in an energy trading marketplace to enable a peer-to-peer trading system where the consumer and the producers are interacting directly with each other through micropayments. And we have demonstrated this in an open source blueprint, where you can also then define the grid logic completely by yourself. We have created two, I would say, like major references at IOTA. One is the data marketplace, which has a bit of more focus towards data and is more centralized. And when I say centralized, I mean semi-centralized, because it would require a central server architecture for the permission management, who could buy and sell data streams on this marketplace. So you as the owner, you can decide, all right, this person wants to buy a data stream, for example, from a temperature sensor in a smart city environment where you have like 10,000 or 100,000 sensor points. And then you make an overlay to understand what is happening in the smart city based on all of these data points. But it enables every participant who is running a sensor to sell this data and actually monetize the data which he or she is aggregating. So the data marketplace, it has a bit of a more strict format, how to work with data. And then we have the industry marketplace. The industry marketplace is taking this concept of the data marketplace then to the next level. I will come to that in a second. So I will also share these slides later. They will be available, or you can just, if you're seeing this online, you can just pause it. But I know it's a lot of text here. So the data marketplace is a server client installation, which is aiming to sell data streams based on the IOTA protocol, where you have the big advantage that you have an immutability which is applied to all of these data streams, so that you know the data is really authentic, it cannot be changed anymore, and what you're buying there is really coming from a certain sensor. And then we have the industry marketplace. It's something what we have created with partners like eClass, Neoception, the Helmut Schmidt University, and the Otto von Guericke University in WeWash, to see how industries can interact on an open marketplace platform. So we have been spending some thought on it, and it's a client-only installation. It's also a blueprint which we have published open source, and it's a vendor and industry neutral platform where someone could upload a contract, and then this contract of the marketplace is described by certain attributes which are standardized. So you could say, I want to buy this industry grade silicon, and I have, let's say, like 200 criteria which are describing how the silicon should be manufactured, but also my buying and selling conditions based on this. Let's say that I have like a 30-day or 90-day warranty, just to bring a couple of items. And then also the payment can happen directly through this marketplace. And the charming part here about IOTA is that you don't need any fees, which is associated with a payment or actually running this marketplace, because the technology itself allows completely free transactions of data and free transactions of payments without having to pay a fee, which is then coming again very handy when you think of selling or like scaling it up. You're thinking of selling hundreds and thousands and millions or like even billions of items or of data points, where just a small fraction of a fee would just accumulate to millions of fees in total. So you can read through it. You can also go to industry.iota.org or to industrymarketplace.net, and you can learn about more about the industry marketplace. This is a short summary, but just looking at the time a bit, I will skip this slide. So, and many now think what is required to actually create a marketplace of your own, or like participate in a consortium or in a working group to create a marketplace, and you think of how this would affect your business model and what would be important for you. There's a number of criteria. So this is a set of requirements what we had thought of when we have been creating the industry marketplace, that it needs to be vendor and industry neutral. It should offer a standardized way of communication. If possible, this should be based on open specifications and standards. This is important for the whole adoption process, so that everybody could just adopt and add or sell own products on this market or services on this marketplace. It always should be decentralized to minimize the potential of outages. And it should be globally accessible. So this is where also distributed ledger technology as a decentralized network comes in, because you can tap into it essentially from every spot of the earth where you want. The authenticity of participants is important, so to avoid scamming as well, but then also to introduce additional features, for example, at a rate like a favorite buyer system or seller system, or like a rating system, for example. You should have an integrated settlement option, so that you can utilize let's say like a cryptocurrency as IOTA directly to automate the process completely. And it should have these immutable audit logs to be compliant with all the legal, financial, and other regulatory requirements of your company. And of course, it should be open source software, just to facilitate the growth of development for this platform. And of course, it should be easy to use, flexible, and offer privacy options as well. There are a couple of other decisions which should go into this, into your train of thought. So who's actually my target group? Do I want to own the marketplace directly? Is it retail, or is it maybe for managed services? This comes then into effect when you need to think of the success criterion. So if I buy something from this marketplace, is it how do I actually ensure that a good or service has been delivered? How to find elements. Do I want to have a built-in settlement or not? Maybe I'm not really experienced with how to use cryptocurrency, so I want to do the settlement my old way. Inventory management, order management. So these are like a number of options which could, if you think of the industry marketplace, then also added to the industry marketplace. This is, and then this is a slide which can show how this would actually work. So we have different companies which would act on specific marketplaces. So you can think of an energy marketplace, of an industry marketplace, or of a telco marketplace. And these companies, they would share a certain interest, but you still have then an underlying technology, what you can see at the bottom as the IOTA protocol. But the technology and the creation of this marketplace software allows enough flexibility that you can apply your own standards, your own semantics, and your own, I would say, necessary like business interactions, or the way your business needs to be structured in terms of workflow and interactions, processes, to to be able to adopt to this marketplace very fast. So this is the idea which we are currently following. So that we say we can utilize IOTA as a decentralized system, and we can build on this decentralized technology, and then establish a marketplace scenario which provides the flexibility for all of these providers, buyers, sellers to interact, but which also enables them to just onboard with a very ease of use. And now, so I think I will take like a couple more minutes. There are some examples just to run through, like how are decentralized marketplace relevant? How can they be used in real world scenarios? We talked about the autonomous machines, which will need to run 24/7. So they need a platform to just seamlessly negotiate, advertise their services, and to transact the money, to do this in a very automated way. You can think of manufacturing, where you have machines which are offering then free capacities in the industry environments, where each machine can essentially earn the money back which it has cost in its production cycle. You can think of machine learning and artificial intelligence. So to make the vehicles work, you need a lot of training. And then you can utilize a decentralized marketplace, which can facilitate the exchange of this training data, for example. You can utilize it as part of collecting data, of selling data, either you as an individual, because you have a certain variable, let's say, where say I want to transmit my health data, and at the time where we're having this webinar, for example, we are in COVID-19 lockdown. So there's a lot of discussion going on about a possible COVID-19 app that it should still respect certain data collection or privacy options, but at the same time, people should share their data. And of course, you can then incentivize people again when they contribute to this open marketplace, where the health data can be used in order to detect if there's a certain outbreak or if certain people are affected of the virus. And then at the same time incentivize them, so just that you have a much larger audience to contribute to this data aggregation. And you can think of the same of cars or of any other system which is equipped with a lot of sensors. For digital assets, it's also relevant. So you can just utilize it to automate a lot of topics. So for example, to just acquire a license when a PC is set up, and this is then automatically bought in a big marketplace framework. And you can think of telecommunication. So this is my last slide regarding the examples. When you think of marketplaces for telecommunication, that a certain provider needs more, let's say, coverage in a certain area due to vacation times. Let's say you have a tourist hotspot, which is very popular in the summer, then this provider, or due to an event, for example, then this provider, instead of building its own infrastructure there, it could just automatically rent a certain infrastructure which is already in place. And this can then be done again in a very automated way, just to save a lot of costs and to be able to scale it up. So important puzzle pieces to make this happen, of course, is the technology itself. It needs to be a reliable technology, which is able to scale and which is able to provide this industry and vendor neutral framework, while having at the same time a lot of flexibility, how it's used and how it can be used. Of course, fees is an aspect what we talked about, that there should be no fees involved. We have the whole governance model. So again, even if you have the technology, but not to rely on just one provider of the technology, but to rely on or to enable or to develop this technology as part of an open source large ecosystem, but also share the governance of the development of this technology. And then, of course, you need the ecosystem, because if you have a very narrow ecosystem, then you will probably not have any adoption or not any support. we are and we are working on this with Tengli. So recapping the previous slide, IOTA itself is a very open technology, and in order to facilitate the development of marketplaces, we are working together in a strategic partnership with the Eclipse Foundation, which is the largest open source organization in the world. And we have founded Tengli. So Tangle is the IOTA network, is called the Tangle, and EE stands for Enterprise Edition. And we have created a working group for corporates to join to think of how we can utilize the IOTA technology for, and we have started with two big topics. So for identity itself, decentralized identity, and then for decentralized marketplaces. So to have a governance layer for the development of this technology, which is then done by Eclipse, but to provide a collaboration layer to bring corporates together to work on an open ecosystem, an open source ecosystem of decentralized marketplaces to facilitate this basic layer of trust for applications, for goods, services, for data, but at the same time be able to work on this open source developments with commercial applications, which are then built also closed source to really be then also competitive. So to establish like a win-win situation. My last slide about the IOTA Foundation. The IOTA Foundation itself. So I work at the IOTA Foundation. Of course, if you've seen on the first slide, we are a non-for-profit organization. We develop open source software, and we collaborate with partners for this open source development with a large community, academia, government, businesses, to really enable an infrastructure for or as a layer of trust, and an infrastructure as the basis for our future digital economy. We do this by empowering individuals to live freely, safely in a digital world. This is very important. We are building these open source technology blueprints, working on the core protocol together with this community. We are growing our ecosystem. And then, of course, the goal is to develop solutions based on open source and with this ecosystem to contribute towards sustainable real-world impact for industry, society, and environment. So I'm at the end of my webinar. Thank you very much for everyone who has tuned in or who is watching this now on the recording. If you want to reach me, just feel free to reach out to holger@iota.org or contact us through iota.org. And then thank you very much, and we can start with a discussion and the Q&A. Thank you.
Hey, wow, thanks, Holger. So there are a lot of really great questions that came in. Thank you, everybody, for asking them. We're going to try and answer as many as we can that fit in with today's topic. And one of the more intriguing questions was asked very early in the chat, and that was, what cryptocurrencies does IOTA use for machine-to-machine transactions? And I mean, on the face of it, it might seem like it's IOTA, but maybe there's another approach here, Holger.
So what we use at IOTA is the IOTA token. And the interesting thing is about IOTA that it's an infrastructure which doesn't require the token. So if you think about cryptocurrency, yes, then it's the IOTA token. But in general, if you think about machine-to-machine transactions, about transferring information, about transferring data, then you don't actually need to buy the token, or you don't need to buy the cryptocurrency itself, because IOTA doesn't have any fees. This is the biggest difference between, I would say, like every other competitor, which is on a similar level. So when you work with IOTA as a corporate, you don't need to buy the cryptocurrency. You can use the infrastructure for trust. You can use it completely for free. without buying anything. But if you want to use the token, so if you want to transfer values, then the token is natively integrated directly into the communication protocol and into the infrastructure. It's secure to transfer, so you can transfer value as well with it.
Hmm. So speaking of infrastructure, I guess, David actually asks a really great question and said, how will you identify market participants in a decentralized marketplace? Know your customer, KYC. And for me, this is actually a very interesting question because I think a lot of this is about trust and trustless situations. So how do we manage that?
I think it depends a bit. So if you think of a decentralized marketplace, it means that everybody can join and you have an open system which is especially made for this. And now the question is, what do you actually transfer through the system? And I could argue that if you have, let's say, data and you have data points which are worth like a fraction of a cent. So take a smart city data platform, for example, where a lot of data is being aggregated and then this data is being sold and somebody with a smart algorithm is interpreting this data and just needs a lot of data. The question is then, if you pay just fractions for a cent, do you really or sell data for fractions of a cent, which accumulates? Is there like a certain limit through which you want to have or should have a KYC? So it could be a KYC, or you say, I just keep the system open, everybody can contribute. And because I keep the system open and there's very little value transfer, maybe I don't need a KYC under specific value. I think so. I think it depends a bit on the scenario. In the industry marketplace, we have done it in a way that we said we introduced decentralized identity. So when you start a participant on the industry marketplace, you get automatically an identification code, and we implemented sort of a whitelist. So you can apply for this whitelist, and this whitelist could then be managed as sort of like a governance model, or you could say company A has approved this DID, but maybe company B has approved another DID. And because you trust this company and this company, then a trust is also inherited to everyone who they approve. And so with this DID, which we have implemented in the marketplace, essentially you could flip a switch. So you could say, if I'm participating in this marketplace and I flip the switch, then I only see offers from persons who have done a KYC or who are on this whitelist. And so I don't think it can be answered with a clear yes or no. I think, or yes or no. I think it depends what you want to transfer. Is it worth a KYC? Do you want to keep it more open? It depends on the set of rules which you agree as part of the marketplace.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme that's recurring in a lot of the questions we're seeing here because what I'm reading from these questions are like, are there solid rules for the way that things have to be done, like data confidentiality and ID management and key management, and even Amit was asking like, where are the data records stored and how does it deal with global transactions and GDPR and CCPA? And are there new global regulations that need to be adopted? And from my perspective in engineering, I kind of feel like we are providing guidance and core libraries, but it's ultimately up to the people that choose to implement it, isn't it, Holger?
I think you're right. Yeah. So what we are doing with IOTA, IOTA essentially decentralizes the infrastructure, and the decentralized marketplace lives on this infrastructure. This means, yeah, as I said, everybody can join. It also means that all the data which is exchanged through the marketplace can be encrypted, but it would still live in a public system. And you could have different scenarios where you say either like the GDPR topics regarding DLT or blockchain, there evolves a certain standard how you deal with it, a sort of like a common understanding how to deal with personal data on the blockchain, or to which extent can you expose it or not. And then you could say maybe it's pseudo-anonymized through IDs, maybe only the search is public, but when you do the negotiation, this happens in private channels, and only then you would reveal your ID. or you could even say that it happens in the backend of each company, and they just trigger certain APIs towards this marketplace to interchange with each other. So I think it depends on the region, because every region ticks a little bit different. And in the end, we still technology doesn't change the law under which we live. So it needs to be a case-by-case decision. But the big advantage is that suddenly, through a decentralized marketplace, we have an infrastructure through which we can bring all of this together, and we can have like even these different marketplaces, which I mentioned before, living on the same network.
So, I mean,
And yeah, and maybe just to add one last sentence, but this is also part. So I mentioned Tangle before, and this is also part of the requirements engineering, what we are doing with Tangle at the moment. So, what are the requirements towards a decentralized marketplace platform? How far should this be, or could this be enabled with IOTA? Also, then where does the intellectual property start versus the open source framework around it? So it's something what we are going to address very soon. But if you also have like more input on it, or if you have a stance on it or experience with it, I would be like happy to discuss it.
well, the I think the recurring theme, again, to return to a couple of Amit's questions here, and to kind of bounce off of the way that the Tangle EE is set up as a way for industry partners to get involved. Amit asked, can we use the DLT for global money transfers? And are there Python-based POC codes? And I think like what we're trying to do here is really foster an ecosystem where your ideas are the ones that are important. And we are here to give you that solid backbone of technology that you can then implement for giving direct commissions to middlemen, or making an edge DLT interface kind of system. I know we have a link for the Python helper for the industry marketplace automation. I'll just paste that
Mhm.
right into the chat. Is there something else you want to say about that, Holger?
I think the global money transfer question is an interesting one, because again, IOTA doesn't have any fees, so you can use it as a DLT then also for cross-border payments. This is very easy, and because the token is natively baked into the whole infrastructure, you can easily utilize it to pay participants on the marketplace or sell something on the marketplace, and immediately then also receive the payment from the marketplace. So this can be used, but again, IOTA doesn't have any fees, so you don't need to pay like any gas or anything like this. How it's being done in other DLTs or blockchains, where you have to pay actually a miner to confirm something for you. We don't have this. So you could use it then also for sub-cent transactions, that you say, I want to sell a part of data, and I sell this for 0.001 cent, and then the other person would also get 0.001 cent. And then, of course, it doesn't matter if this is happening in a local area. To say, I would be in Germany, but I'm running some models on how the let's say about I would need a certain temperature measurements collected all over the world or in India, and then I can directly pay all of these sensors all over the world, and it costs me as much as if I would pay the person directly next to me. So there's no middleman. This is important. And regarding the addendum regarding payments made in cash, it depends a bit. So in the marketplace, we have to use the IOTA token. But with the more popularity or increasing popularity of cryptocurrencies, there are also more fiat gateways available. I think this is still like a very weak point in general of cryptocurrencies, including IOTA, that you cannot buy that easily cryptocurrencies yet with fiat. But with increasing popularity, I think also the access points for cryptocurrency will be easier. This also means that you have a lot less volatility versus, like, for example, what we've been seeing over the last 2 days, where there was a big push in cryptocurrency again. So having more access points, having more regulation with cryptocurrency and off cryptocurrency will then also decrease the volatility. More regulation points will will decrease the wash trading and so on, what is currently happening, these pump and dump schemes. So cryptocurrency will get a lot more stable, a lot less volatile. And at one point, so this is my personal opinion, then it would be treated similar like to a foreign exchange. Let's say when you have an exchange rate between euros and dollars, which might change maybe 0.5 or 1% in a day. But there's a lot of arbitrage, which is evening this out, that you don't have these big gaps and jumps. And then you could start to use it, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe, I don't know, in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, like in a similar like a currency directly.
Well, we're kind of running out of time,
Oh,
and there's one question that's really been on my mind this whole discussion. And you used the word open source a lot in your presentation just now. And we can I think everyone in this room can agree that modern business would just be totally impossible without free software. I mean, the technologies that we have today are so based on this fundamental idea of collaboration and openness. And you know, do you think that decentralized marketplaces are in a similar position to level the playing field? Like the way that open source is done?
I, I think so. So open source is incredibly important, and we see essentially the whole IT of the world running on open source. Um, and similarly, I think that also data marketplaces, like decentralized marketplaces, should be open source in order to have no silos. This was the primary reason why IOTA is completely open source. If you keep it closed source, you keep it again in a silo. If you license it, you're creating a silo. So in order really to foster a global ecosystem, foster this global infrastructure and open infrastructure, it needs to be open source, that everybody can come in, contribute, improve, check for security issues, add advanced features, and I see exactly the same with software for decentralized marketplaces. Simply because it just it's such a big advantage to have an open source software which is completely globally available and which creates a global network where everyone can participate. I find this idea, it's a bit similar to the internet. I find it absolutely stunning that we have today's these possibilities and that we can create these networks. Imagine, like, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit older. I don't know how the typical viewer audience at the moment is, but when the internet got very popular, this was very eye-opening. I grew up very analog, and had then the shift towards a digital environment. And for me, experiencing something like the internet and all the possibilities, I think this can only happen in a free system with also free software. Good. Oh, I'm seeing Daniel seem to drop out uh, due to a technical difficulty. Ah, no, no, he's back.
Hey, yeah,
Uh,
the internet's like great technology, everybody. But I'm actually much happier that I'm not on analog film. I think that would bring out the worst of my
yeah.
pores. But hey, we have to wrap it up. I know there's a couple questions that we didn't get to. We're going to try and answer those in our follow-up email. And I really want to thank all of you for bearing with us through my technical difficulties and also this very complex topic. And this was our third webinar. There's more coming up. But today, we'd like to thank you for your interest and the time you spent with us. And so we're actually going to give you access to a certificate of attendance from this live session that has been securely published and stored at Tangle. Now, you will receive a link to download your certificate from the Tangle in a follow-up email right after this webinar. So for now, be sure to register for next week's session where we'll talk about unified identity and in my opinion, the next stage of the digital revolution, which is the future of distributed identifiers. It's a mouthful, but it's actually really interesting. So we'll post the sign up link in the description of this video. And oh, Speaking of which, be sure to, where's the button? Like the video and follow us here on YouTube. We really appreciate it. And if you want to learn more about IOTA, feel free to reach out to us over any of the channels in the follow-up email. And finally, want to reach out to our sponsors and say thank you. You can expand your DLT knowledge with the official learning partner of the IOTA Foundation, the IoT One Academy, where you will get unprecedented access to IOTA onboarding courses for developers and managers in order to quickly gain broad knowledge about IOTA and DLT in general. So enjoy the amazing learning content that's been co-authored with the IOTA Foundation over at training.iota.org. And I would just like to say thank you to Tara and Dave for being the best tech crew for the webinar ever. Stay safe, everybody. See you next week.